had a good friend who grew up in Ticino, and she took me up into the mountains, and we're up thousands of feet above anywhere, and then we go to this hunting lodge, and there were these two old men, one of whom I came up with, and one was this guy who owns the restaurant, and he served us this cheese and said it was this cheese from this mountain in Ticino that's only made at this particular altitude. And the old guy I was with was saying, that's not the cheese, and they started fighting. And then for me, this is the best thing, because two old men fighting about cheese in the mountains, there's something sort of profoundly comforting about that, because it means that you're somewhere where food and culture really are connected.
Randall, you on Five Faves talked about the top things, and primarily a lot of them are revolving around food. So for you, where does your story begin?
It can begin in a lot of different places, but quite often when food is the focus of it, it will start in a place like, it'll start in a way that the entire travel experience is combined into the food experience. And probably the top experience I've had that relates to that in my life is the wine bus, the public wine bus. Does anybody know where in the world has a bus that has a public wine route? I'll sell you all a ticket for $50 after this. It's Monterey Cacao. You could write about that all day. I mean, and when I think about that with regions in Canada, I think, God, get a shuttle bus and make it so easy for me as a tourist, whether I'm a journalist or just a tourist, to get there. And then the effort is taken away from me. And it was only $3. That, to me, that's a place that a great food story can start to take place, because once I'm, the ease of getting there was...
I tend to think about ingredients, but I also think about my audience. Most of my audience is in the Chicago area, so I want to think about things that are not, terribly long flights away. If they are, I want to find some kind of local connection. We did a press trip to Sweden, Copenhagen, about a month ago, and found out that the pastry chef at this restaurant, Noma, which had just won the top restaurant in the world last year, was from Chicago at Noma. So interviewed her while I was there. I'm looking for, if I see a trend in restaurants of microgreens and little tiny, I guess microgreens, what you call them. There's a place outside of Cleveland called the Chef's Garden, and I pitched my bosses, I want to go to the Chef's Garden, it's in Huron, Ohio, and see how they grow these microgreens.
All are very open and receptive to this idea of local and seasonal and artisanal and all that, and it's all very meaningful to us, but then it becomes, because it's not new, how do you fit it into a story? How do you make it relevant or compelling somehow? And to me, these things tend to be, although I do agree with Steve about it, ingredients can be exciting, and when you go somewhere, you see it where things are made, context is, but for me, the stories where I really I see the story when I meet people and you hear a little bit about how they, either they're fifth-generation farmers or they were an accountant who dropped it all to become a farmer.
I really want to have, not necessarily a character, I don't want some kind of crazy caricature of a person, but I do want personality a little bit, if it's going to be on television especially, and we're talking visuals. Someone's got to have some life. They can't just be, well, I've been farming potatoes for the last 300 years.
So Steve, because you do media training, so give us some suggestions in terms of what can people have prepared so that if they do encounter this, they're ready for it,
Well, they should think visually. They don't want to just show up with sort of that one tomato, if they're talking about heirloom tomatoes, or the one bottle of wine. I mean, you really want to see a wide variety of options. I want to see the vineyard. I want to see them crushing those grapes, or pressing them when it's 14 degrees centigrade overnight. You sort of need to figure out who's your spokesperson, who's going to be representing your brand, who's going to be speaking to the media on your behalf. That needs to be worked out ahead of time.
For you to think about your operation, whatever it is, if it's a farm or a restaurant or whatever, and get the seasonality in your head. So how do you celebrate your product in wintertime? How do I tell the story of Canadian farmers in winter? What's going on a organic hog farm that could be of interest that a visitor might want to stop by and learn about, and maybe buy a pound of your bacon while they're there. Look at their neighborhood. Give me a reason to write about their neighborhood. Who else is there? What else is there?
Great suggestion. I think, find ways to become part of a bigger story. If you want to be in a travel magazine, it's very unlikely that
you're going to write about these.
A travel magazine in New York is going to send someone to write about one restaurant. So is it part of the charcuterie trend? Is it part of the meat focus, return to meat or something? Is it a neighborhood in Toronto? Is it just a general story about Toronto, and then when the writer is going there, and he's looking for where he should go to eat, you've got so much great press and so much goodwill built up among the chef community and the food community.
I think most people should be able to show you the repertoire in 4 or 5 courses. I don't think you need to do 18 courses, unless it's Alinea or someplace that's what they do. The tasting menu is 18 courses. But really, you don't need to do, it's overkill.
And don't be disappointed if we have to move it